Perfect. And you can hear me well, right?
Yep.
Awesome. So welcome to another SUP workshop. And I'm Seb, and being your humble moderator. And the purpose of those workshop sessions is to give our founders and entrepreneurs quick advice on how to improve their startup journey. Some people are watching it live, other people are watching it on demand on our platform afterwards. Structure is basically 45-minute session and then 15 minutes Q&A. And apologies in advance if I'm pointing my finger and saying, now it's 10 minutes left, now it's 5 minutes left. So just make sure that we keep track on time. And as always, when you're not speaking, mute your mic, and if possible, keep your webcam turned on. It's really nice to see Melly, for example, to see your face and your reactions. And yeah, the recordings will be added to the library afterwards. And if you want to reach out, then I think Kristian will be happy to share the presentation. And thanks to Bianca for coordinating. And if people arrives, then happy to let people in while we're doing the session, so we'll not interrupt. And I'll push a survey before the Q&A, and that would be great to get your feedback on this session and what we should do more. So yeah, and apologies for moving this session around. We, for some reason, scheduled it on the Easter holiday week, which was not an ideal thing, but I'm sure that we'll be able to share Kristian's knowledge with the community many ways anyways. And with that being said, it's my pleasure to welcome Kristian Skarphagen, who is an experienced strength and conditioning coach, high performance coach, and practical educator. Kristian has been coaching top athletes for over a decade, and he can talk a little bit more about himself, but he has a lot of experience in this area, and leadership, team building, and individual performance. And I think startups and founders, which is under a lot of pressure, often has a lot to learn and take inspiration from elite athletes. So that's why we're here today, to talk about stress management for startups. And yeah, I'm gonna hand over the mic to you, Kristian. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for the invite. I'm happy that we finally found a date to set this up. Also thanks to you, Seb, and also for Bianca for setting it up and sharing the belief that the startup world and the world of elite pro sports share a lot of different similar upsides as well as challenges. I hope everyone had a good lunch and a good coffee here, and then we get started. So as Seb said, despite my background as a sports performance coach, strength and conditioning coach, whatever title you want to use, it doesn't really matter. The end goal is to achieve as high performance as possible for as long as possible. Sustainability and all these buzzwords, as of now, I've been doing that for the past 12 years, whether that's on an individual basis or as an organization. High performance is kind of the baseline in that setting. It happens to be the sports performance setting, but I find it super interesting to also, there's a lot of high performance in your field or in like finance, IT, entrepreneurs. Like you can find high achievers and high performance everywhere. But just to find out a little bit about the participants here, how many of you don't have to be sports nerds by any means, but how many of you are somewhat interested in sports at least? You can raise your hand on the function here in the Zoom call. So there are at least a handful of you guys. How many of you are parents? Okay, awesome, thanks. if you would love to, I would love to see what you expect to get out of this workshop. So if feel free to share in the group chat whatever your expectation of this is, as I'm talking here. But I want to share some aspects that are truly foundational to be able to even perform at the professional sport, no matter what sport it is. Maybe you can see some similarities. So what it takes is, point one, I would say delayed gratification. You have to go all in and to achieve at the best of your capacity. And the things you're doing today maybe pays off over time, in a month or a year or 2 years or 5 years. All these daily monotonous, aka boring habits that you can, people around you might look on, from the outside in and say, what, this is so boring, how can you be able to do this? And maybe you don't think it's boring, right? But all these monotonous habits, routines to mastering your skill, to mastering your craft, that's an ongoing process. And the mindset of constantly looking for these small tweaks for improvements. This might be the hardest one, I would say, to keep focusing on the end goal while being process oriented instead of result oriented, while operating in an industry where everything around you and everyone around you is focusing on the results. And the last one is the connection between our well-being and our performance. And with that, I mean, if we feel good mentally and physically, the odds are definitely in your favor to perform well professionally as well. So these are foundational stuff in the sports performance industry. And I think that this might resonate fairly well with you guys as well in the startup world. Is that right? Or am I totally off here? So most of us, I would say, has felt a little bit too stressed because of work. I think that's fairly normal. But have you ever stressed over or second guessed yourself over whether the last big decision you made was the right call or not? Sorry. Or for that sake, I would say have had bad conscience towards someone you love because of high stress or lack of patience, always running late, or just a little bit too much going on work-wise. Or if you ever had asked yourself how you can take the next step to improve in your skill, in your craft as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a high performer, or even as an incubator hub, right? All these aspects we will touch on, and if you can relate to any of this, I'm sure you're in the right place right now. New research shows that one of the most common reasons for stress today is the feeling of not being enough, of being inadequate, or both professionally or privately. For some of us, it's due to work, right? Demanding boss or investors, a high workload, or difficult colleagues to work with. It could, for another group, be to have the high expectations you have on yourself and the product that you deliver, right? And for some others, it might be everything else going on outside of work. The relationships, the conflicts, the family, logistics, meal prep, and so forth. It could be, for most of us, I would say, it might be a combo of all of these things. If we pause here for a second. What's your thoughts here? Is there anyone that can relate, or you want to add something? Melly, you were the first in joining here, so I'll ask you first.
Thank you for asking me, but still, yeah, I mean, usually handling the workload is the one makes me stress about the future. But other than that, I think I kind of have my own ways to handle stress. If that was
Awesome.
you're asking.
Awesome. And Sophie, I don't know how to pronounce it, if that's the full name or not.
And Sophie, that's the full name. Yeah.
Sophie. Okay, sorry about that.
No, all good. Like, I would say, no, I think I can actually just nod and say, like, it's very relatable also when you say, like, feeling inadequate, and then sometimes that can even be like the biggest blocker for execution. It sometimes turns into procrastination or doubting your skills and so on. So it's like, I think the building the confidence to, not stress unnecessarily in situations where you just need to be confident that what the path you're going down, or like your skills, are enough to just push and move on with your work, if that makes sense.
Thanks both of you for sharing. I would say, like, as you mentioned, none of this happens in a vacuum, right? Very often a big risk for startups, as well as for professional athletes or for sports teams in general, is if the members are not the best versions of themselves, and how that can show, I would say, grumpiness, lack of patience, lack of focus, uncreativity, lack of engagement, productivity. All these other factors are, like, if you look at what's the cost of lack of engagement or bad customer service or unpleasant towards co-founders or investors even, right? It's hard to even put a number on, because it's a high price for sure. And in short, I would say you're not the most encouraging co-founder or colleague that you would like to be, the patient parent that maybe you would like to be, or the solid and trustworthy entrepreneur that you will have, or like who would like to be. And so, as stated here, the real question we should ask ourselves is, what's the cost of no action? If we're not take action to these aspects, that we take care of ourselves, or how to manage stress. And that's what we're gonna go through today. So usually when I do this, it's at least a 1-day full workshop, as well as some individual coaching on top of this. Today we have very limited amount of time, but I will try to share some insights on how to apply at least this elite sports mindset into the entrepreneurship. And I would say this might sound bold, but if you take action on these aspects and tools that I will try to guide you through today, and stay consistent with them. If you will take action and you will stay consistent with them, you will easily outperform most of your competitors in the market by default. And the main reason I'm so confident in saying so is because they won't do it. The vast majority will not do these things. It's too foundational in a world where most social media platforms, or everything that we consume, is about life hacks and shortcuts and all these aspects. So I don't have a decade of experience in how to take startups from nothing to everything, and I'm not the Gary Vaynerchuk's and Alex Hormosis here. I don't have that knowledge, but what I do have is 13 years of coaching from the elite level, and have seen those best athletes in the world improving their skills and craft to be able to perform. And that comes with the monotonous, the boring habits, the mindsets and the routines. And that's what we're going to focus on. So what is stress? It is neutral, or sterile, or as the science describes it, unbiased, right? It's nothing. And Seb asked me here before we went online, like, what is stress? Look, I can't really remember the question, but it was related to stress for sure. And it's very important to separate positive stress from negative stress. So since stress in itself is neutral, it becomes positive or negative when we connect a feeling to it, right? So that also means it's subjective, right? So, and that subjectivity depends on our personality. It depends on our preferences, our experiences too, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say we have two people here. We have Kristian and we have Seb, for instance, in this example, right? Seb is an extrovert, social, outgoing kind of guy, like the social interactions, like to meet new people, and would probably profit and enjoy, let's say, sales role, right? Where you meet a lot of people and you have to have all these social interactions. While, let's take me for an example. Okay, so I'm an introvert. I'm a way better in detail-oriented work. Maybe I don't like the social aspect as much. I don't like to meet all these new people. I don't like to be interrupted. But I'm way better at focusing on certain tasks, right? So if you would put me in a sales position in this example, I would probably be drained by the end of the day, coming home, lay on the couch and just feeling exhausted, right? Because that work situation doesn't fill my energy. It drains my energy, right? While in Seb's case, it fills his energy. So by the end of the day, he's like, okay, let's go. Well, what else can you bring for me? I have a lot of more energy. So in that regard, it's subjective, depending on who we are as a person, what types of experiences do we have. And another important aspect of that is the majority of the information we get through news, through social media and whatnot, is stress equals negativity, right? But the positive aspect of stress is also important. We actually need stress too. That helps you sharpen your focus, perform when you actually need to perform the very best, right? It's not sustainable to have it all the time, right? But it's necessary to have it. So it's for sure a balancing act, and that complexity it's basically why we're here today. So in the elite sports, everyone that is there has their own unique talent somehow. I'm sure that goes for the entrepreneurs as well. Somehow you have a talent, whatever that might be, that have helped you to get to where you are, right? But I do have some bad news. If you only rely on that talent, you have reached your glass ceiling pretty soon. And what I mean by that is when you get to that certain level, high-end talent is a baseline. Whether you're on elite level in Sweden or in Scandinavia or at the world stage, and that goes for both for you individually and as well as for your company. The talent aspect will not be that unique anymore. Everyone has talent by that time. So instead, what makes you unique? I don't have that answer. That's only up to you. Hopefully after this day, it could be how to manage stress, right? That's the one tool that might be able to make you unique. How to perform on a consistent level over a long period of time. And how to make it sustainable, both for the company, obviously, but also for yourself. And a big factor for managing stress is in a sustainable way is self-awareness. Self-awareness in pro sports is an elemental foundation to be able to perform on the elite stage. But that doesn't mean that everyone has it. You can still get to the level, to the elite level, without a high level of self-awareness. But it's very, very unusual to stay there on a consistent basis over a long period of time. And you guys are all smart. You're in the SUP 46, you're at the SUP community. So you understand these relationships and the value of relationships. I would say no matter what industry you're in, I'm pretty sure there's other people in that industry, right? Which means that we need to be good at nurturing those relationships. And we all know that people do business with other people, right? No matter where, if it's chat GPT or if it's AI, people do business with other people. And 100% of your colleagues, of your clients, of your customers are other people, right? So we need to be good at the relationship aspect too. The one relationship aspect that we will focusing on today is the one we almost always take for granted and forget about, which is the relationship you have with yourself. Are you self-aware or self-disciplined? Or when you make a mistake, which we all will do because we are human beings, right? How's your self-compassion? Are you able to let it go and move on? Don't dwell on it. But more importantly, are you taking the time and doing these things that you know that you need to do to fill your own bucket? And I said do because you will never find this time for anything. It's like I know how my schedule looks, and I'm sure your schedule are jammed also. You'll not find time for anything. You have family, you have other commitments, right? Besides from the startup priorities. So you won't be able to find that time. You will need to take the time to fill your own bucket mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, whatever that means to you. It's up to you, but you have to take the time to do that because that's the only way for you to perform your best self.
I want to just start to one anecdote with sports and startups that I sort of recognize when I hear you saying this is sometimes when you see young talent in a sports team, in an elite sports team, and it's not, you can see the talent during the game that someone is really good, right? And they might score or something, but it's often in the interviews or something before or after the game when you get to know them, understand more their mentality, that you can really see if this could go really, really far. So going back to your point about like talent is the baseline, and then everything just lands on like, okay, how did this super talent view their own life, their own challenges and their performance and ups and downs, and like based on how they communicate that, it's easier to tell like, okay, this could be a superstar, right? And if I compare that also with the startup land, I've seen so many companies, and one of the things that I might be unconsciously looking for is that type of approach. It's like, okay, how do I view the journey? Do I have that like mentality that accepts failure or challenge, and but still being compassionate about the like, okay, it's okay to make mistakes or fail as long as I learn something and improve afterwards. So it's like it's very, very similar in the startup world.
Exactly. Okay, awesome. Thanks for input. And it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's not a black or white kind of answer, but the growth or fixed kind of mindset. Like no matter what level you're at, you can still be improved, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna shift.
Did you call it the growth mindset?
Exactly. Yeah. There's a book written by Carol Dweck. I can put it in the information you get afterwards, called Mindset, and she writes about that. She's a PhD, like super smart. Really good book too. Writes about growth mindset, where you can excel wherever you're at from, or a fixed mindset where, like, it doesn't really matter what you do, you have your position or your role in the society or in the team or in the career, whatever it might be. Yeah, anyway, so like I said, we're gonna shift focus here a little bit. This is the baseline. The baseline is self-awareness. And even though my background is in the sports performance industry, we're not gonna dive too deep into the food and the exercise today. But if we play with the idea that I will ask you to pick up a pen and paper and make a list of the healthiest food that you can think of, I'm pretty sure you can do that in a heartbeat, right? And if I would ask you to shout out how many hours per night you should sleep, everyone would do that in a split second. Probably most of you guys would shout the same number even, right? And if I would ask you what a weekly training routine should look like in rough terms, meaning numbers of sessions per week, different type of activities, every single one of you could do that without a problem too. If, on the other hand, I looked you in the eyes and I asked if that's the food you eat, the amount of hours you slept last night, or when was the last time you did that kind of exercise or training over a extended period of time, many of you would start seeing a gap here, right? We know exactly what we should be doing, but for some reason, that's not always the behavior that we carry out on a day-to-day. This is what we call a performance gap. We know about a lot of things that we should do, whether that's personal or it's for the company or for the business, it doesn't matter. What we know and what we actually do on a consistent basis will be separated. And I would say, if there's one thing I want you to remember from today, is this. And all this information you will get afterwards. You will have this QR code that you can scan, so you get all the info after the session, so you don't have to take notes or anything like that now. But if you have an imaginary notebook, on the first page, you write down 40 to 50 activities that will give you energy, that will recharge your batteries, that will kind of make you feel good, right? 40 to 50 activities is a lot. You will find it, I promise, but you might have to dig. You have to put in the effort, maybe to get to know yourself a little bit better, but you will be able to listen, for sure. Well, it might be some sort of exercises, it might be a long walk, you meditate, play guitar, have beers with your buddies, read a book, play football, paddle, hunt, fish, you name it, video games, or obviously spend quality time with the family, right? There's a lot of things that you can do to fill your bucket. While on the next page we have the obvious one. What takes away your energy? What will make you feel drained? Regardless of how often or infrequently it happens. There's no requirement for how much or how many points here, but be honest with yourself. It could be relationships, it could be situations, it could be work, it could be physical aspect of things, right? And these answers, so to say, are irrelevant for everyone else but you. So you don't have to show these lists to anyone either. While on the third page, I want you to fill out how you spend the beginning and the end of the day. How's your morning routine looks like, and how's your evening routine look like? What do you do the first 30 to 60 minutes in the morning, and what do you do after you wake up, and last 30 to 60 minutes of the day? I know all days doesn't look the same, but in general. And obviously we all know that a lot of routines have been turned upside down because of the pandemic and after, but hopefully we're on a recovery journey here at least. And we also are creatures of habits. There's a Duke University study showed that I think it was 42 or 45% of everything we do during our waking hours are habits. Meaning that nearly half of everything we do from the time that we wake up until we go to bed is basically on autopilot. Kind of insane when you think about it. So we can see how important our habits are. And I understand that obviously Wednesdays and Saturdays will differ, right? But in general terms. So the next step in this stress tolerance tool is to compare the lists, compare the pages of notes. On the one hand, you have everything you need, you know that will help you feel better, that will recharge the batteries. On the other hand, you have what drains you, what drains the energy, and you also have how it actually looks as of now. If we've done this correctly, there should be a gap here. It does for every one of us, no matter what level we're at or how big or small the performance gap is. It should be a gap. If you've done it honestly. We have a lot of things that you know that you should do, but you don't take the time to do it for various reasons. The consequence is for an elite sport athlete that you don't maximize the recovery or the performance and the development of it. I would argue that the same goes for a founder in a startup company. You don't maximize the performance, the recovery, nor the development.
On that sort of stress tolerance analysis, if you'll do it on yourself, and you ask like what makes you feel drained, there's a bunch of things that you do as a startup founder that like you need to be like a jack of all trades, right? Sometimes you're doing admin, other times you're selling, sometimes you're building products, sometimes you're setting strategies. Sometimes you're coaching or mentoring or leading. It's impossible to be good at all of those things, meaning that get energy of all those activities. So that means that you by default as a startup founder are constantly doing things that in some ways drains your energy. And I'm assuming like if you're an elite athlete, there are certain ways that you need to practice or train or stay healthy or stay have the optimal physique, that sometimes you're doing things that you don't like to do either. Like what are the Jedi mind tricks to sort of accept the boring energy draining stuff and really blossom on the positive stuff?
Good question. I would say that whether depending on where you are in the journey, so to say, some aspects we just need to do, but we also need to consider the fact that we need to replenish the energy, whether that's doing certain work related stuff to replenish that we get energy from, or it's taking care of yourself, getting adequate amount of sleep, or whatever it might be. To like, you have these windows where you need to refill the batteries, right? Whether that's work or at home or whatever, food, training, all these like foundational aspects. So as long as you do those and don't neglect that, I would say to a certain extent that will raise the tolerance of because we need the balance here. The improving the stress tolerance, meaning we need more energy coming in to our bucket than going out of it. And obviously it would make sense to have as less things as possible to drain you with energy, right? But that doesn't mean that's zero, right? It could be a few or as low as possible, obviously, but it's a balancing act again. Melee.
Yes, so I want to ask, most of the time I don't even realize how much stressed I am. Like last couple of weeks, for instance, I've been working a lot, and then eventually I took out from one of the person I really love. So my question is, are there any warning signs or red flags that we should be aware of when it comes to stress and burnout in a startup environment?
Stress is super complex. And I would say for you or for me or for Seb, it could all differ. We have different signs depending who we are and whatnot. I would say, I'm sure you can feel some signs if you're really honest with yourself. If you have anyone close to you, maybe you can ask them as well, because some signs we don't even see ourselves, right? Whether that's a lack of patience or mood or energy level or like, yeah, whatever it might be, right? It's all these aspects. It could be, I know some clients I work with, they can't really talk. They start to stubborn, right? Even though they like, usually they can talk perfectly fine. It could be other physical aspects as like gaining weight or like stuff like that too. The most obvious ones I would say are problem falling to sleep or maybe waking up in the middle of the night. So you fall asleep, but then a couple of hours later you wake up out of the blue, right? So it's a tough question to ask because it could be in so many different ways. I don't know if that was too vague of an answer, but at least it's something.
I mean, I see some of them as a good sign, like, okay, now I woke up early, I shouldn't have woke up, but then it's good, now I can work more. But I don't know if it's the right signal that I should take.
So this is a side note for sure, but ask yourself this question. How would you be able to perform if you gave yourself a full night of sleep per week, like an extra full night of sleep per week? Or how would you be as a human being, as a partner, as a whatever, like all these aspects? How would you be able to perform privately and professionally if you would give yourself a full night of extra sleep per week?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's impossible. Then eventually you lose the track. But there are some limits that I know, but at certain level, it's hard to realize that I am on that limit. So I want to have a sign or a warning before going into that.
Yeah, I can just mention like the two things happened to me when I was like under super extreme pressure for many reasons. I started getting rashes in my body, like my immune system was basically breaking down. And then back to your point, Kristian, my wife told me like I'm worried about you. Right? I was like I've been grinding like always. What do you mean? And then she told me like certain behavior, certain things, and I was like, oh shit, like something is not right right now.
And you weren't probably even able to see it yourself until she highlighted it.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe we need someone else to say to us like something is not going well with you.
Yeah, I think that the ideal scenario is, like, at least for me, that if I can be present enough, because I'm always grinding and working and problem solving, right? But if I can be present enough and listen to my body or how I behave or how I feel, then I think I should be able to, like, catch those signals early. But then again, it's the sort of the compassion I have to myself as well, right? Because I'm always deprioritizing myself and my health because of business, partner, kids, everything else, social life, everything else is like of a higher priority, and then you're like deteriorating.
Yeah, and it's the tough one is like it's so common to neglect all these like, no, it's not that bad, and then all of a sudden, boom. So a certain level of self-awareness is the one aspect. The other one is, I would say, just dropped it. Anyway, so self-awareness is the one thing, and the other one is to ask people around you as well. Could be colleagues, it could be partner, it could be, yeah. And Sophie.
No, I feel like it's just a point of like self-awareness, right? Because I think maybe all of us maybe seen like people burn out, right? Even people where you're like, but these people are like super self-aware, you know, they seem to have everything in order, and then bam, you know, you don't even as a person around them actually saw it coming, right? It just, yeah, bam, they hit the wall. Yeah. I just want to say, like, the exercise, or like the 3 steps that you mentioned here, I think like even for you, like Mili, like you don't even always need people around you to tell you, you know, if there's a red flag, but like if you maybe, yeah, do this exercise as well, I think this is also an important like step in understanding, like, okay, do I actually spend time on the things that are good for me? Because we all have identified, we have stress in our lives, we have pressure, we have things we need to do, right? But are we making sure, like, when you do this like exercise, right, are you doing the things that give you energy? If the answer is no, right, if these are not part of your daily habits, it is already kind of maybe a warning sign that you may be stressed, because you don't even feel like you have the energy or the capacity in your daily life to do the things that actually do you well. Yeah.
Good, awesome. Thanks for the input. And the other, I would just add one last thing here. The problematic stuff is that I mentioned positive stress previously, right? And so there's a mix of negative stress in our lives, and there's a mix of positive stress, but they all adds up, right? It accumulates. So for some people, let's say high performers, they okay, so we go in the gym and then we crush ourselves there instead. It's like, yeah, maybe you should go take a walk, or go on a yoga class, or like decompress instead of like go even like spike the heart rate even higher, right? And that's the other aspect of it too. We need to understand that even the positive stress, it could be where let's say you have kids and you're a coach of their soccer team, right? You find it super fun. It's still stress though. Stress if it's like time management, and I need to be there, and then I have to plan the practices and whatnot. This is still stress, even though it's fun. So we need to have this balancing act of these negative and positive stress too. As mentioned, it's a complex area here, and we touched on sleep. That's another lecture in itself, or a workshop. So these aspects is what I'm doing individual coaching in too, where, okay, so we dive deep into you as an individual. How can we maybe first of all find accountability and what to do, and being honest about it, and also then follow up and individualize the design of the setup that we can do as well. So not taking care of ourselves, most of us, like Seb just mentioned, we might think it's selfish to do these things for ourselves, or really don't think it's important to yourself to have energy or feel good. But if you're that kind of person that you can relate to what I just said, look around in your life. And the question I guess I want you to ask yourself is, does not taking care of yourself affect someone else? How does it affect your children, your partner, your business partner, your parents, your friends, your colleagues, that you're not the best version of yourself and only maybe can perform on a fraction of what you should be able to perform? It's a huge mistake to think that we don't have time to spend time prioritizing ourselves, because the very people that you care about the most is the people around you, the people close to you, right? Along with yourself, those are the people that will suffer the most from the fact that you can only perform that fraction I just mentioned. So it might sound obvious to some of us, but remember, what's the cost of no action? What is the cost? I have another aspect here that there's no chance I'll have time for today, but we can do it this way instead. So, and this goes for the best athletes in the world. They're able to keep and focus on these monotonous, boring daily habits, and to do this on a consistent basis. That's the most, even though you're a talent going up and you have a career ahead of you, or you're in the middle of it, or in the startup world, or you're a big corporate business already, you need to be able to do the basic tasks on a consistent basis. And if you're not taking care of yourself, the company can't really build off of that, right? It's impossible. So what's the price you pay for not taking care of yourself? It always comes with a price tag, whether that's the business that won't be sustainable, or it's your health, or if it's the people around you, or if it's all of the above. But we also need to be aware of this stress, right? So let's say, as I mentioned before, me and Seb are exposed for the same situation. That doesn't mean that we react the same way. It's super subjective, depending on personality, depending on preferences, depending on experiences. I usually, and I didn't do this today, but let's say I take the example about the PhD professor in physics and the MMA fighter, right? It's a wide range between the two, right? You have the PhD professor and the MMA fighter. Let's take the MMA fighter and put him in the physics class. Do you think we'll be stressed? I would have, for sure. If you take the professor and put him in an MMA cage, what do you think happened there? Stress, right? It's so contextual, depending on, because they're not experienced in those contexts, but they're super confident in their own realm, right? And the basics, what is the basics in your role? I can't really answer to that. It depends on the role, right? But some basics are universal. Sleep, for instance. Prioritize sleep. I asked before, if you would give yourself a full night of extra sleep per week, I don't mean we can create magic here out of the blue. I mean like this. If we have 7 days per week, right? If you add an extra hour per night, all of a sudden we have 7 hours extra sleep, right? And the argument would be, yeah, but that's 7 hours I can work. Well, short term or long term? We covered the performance aspect, the performance gap aspect as well. What fills your energy? I don't have those questions. I don't have the questions on what drains your energy either. usually it's relationships. Very, very often it's relationships. This is the QR code I mentioned previously. You will have all the details about the performance gap tool I mentioned. You will have a couple of more stress management tools that we haven't covered today. The full presentation, tickets to an alignment. I would say though, the online event is a Swedish one. So, and then a free consultation with me, 30 minutes digital, whatever we can chat, whatever you would like to focusing on, and some contact info if you want to book me for the company or for other types of events. Thank you for taking the time and for paying your attention to me for this 45 minutes or whatever it was.
Thank you so much, Kristian. Really thoughtful and surfaces a lot of interesting questions and thoughts. Yeah, there's definitely a performance gap in my world when I do the quick thinking about what I know I should do and what I'm doing. But yeah, it's there's always things to improve, and I'm happy that from a personal side, I'm starting taking regular morning walks. That has been amazing for me. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to improve in many ways. I'm gonna push the survey real quick. I think Dan left, but I'm gonna do like push it. So please share your opinion about the session. That you should have a survey in front of you. Quick Q&A. We have 6 minutes left before we end this workshop. Melly and Sophie, do you have any questions you want to jump in with?
Yes, I have one if we have a little bit more time. So for my personal experience, work-life balance never works in a startup. And when I started my journey, I thought that the hard stuff was finance, manufacturing, operations, and accounting, this kind of stuff. We had to go to school, learn these subjects. But now I see is that the hard stuff is actually managing, motivating, and leading people, keep believing you and make people believe in your story. And we all are founders, right? We have to be good leaders. We cannot have a bad day, no matter how scared or like depressed we are. We shouldn't show any fear. So to your back. So at the end, like we all scared and depressed. And my question is, how can I create like a culture of stress management and like mental wellness within my startup, and ensure that like people around me are taking care of themselves?
Can you repeat the last thing you said?
My question is, how can I create a culture of stress management and mental wellness within my startup for people around me, while also keeping myself healthy?
I think you just said that answer. I think you need to prioritize yourself and be like a leader in that area, right? And show that for you, that's important, right? So you want to be the role model in that certain area, right? And then obviously then you can, so let's backtrack. It's very hard for you to push that culture if you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I mean. You need to be the role model, and then people can follow you, right? You don't have to be an expert by any means. You just do whatever, like Seb mentioned, going for a walk. Okay, let's do that on a consistent basis. How will that make you feel? And maybe even take the walk without the cell phone. Okay, that's the next step. How will that make you feel? I mean, it could be as basic as that to start with, at least. But I do think that you need to be a role model in the industry if you want to, in your company, if you want to create a change for your employees.
And yes, Melly, sorry, continue.
No, I was going to thank you to Kristian for his answer and also for the whole event. It's been very useful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The one last thing that I wanted to add on the sort of the stress perspective and the like it is like you're saying, Meli, like work-life balance in a startup world is like I seldom see it. Very, very, very seldom see that in a like high performance team. When it's this early, it's just like really, really, really difficult. And one of the things that I've seen drive motivation still and help mentally, I'm not saying that it's healthier, but from a performance point of view, I've seen it help a lot, is purpose-driven startups, where sometimes you're feeling really bad for several reasons of the company or personally, but going back to the basic principles of why you're building a company, what problem you're solving, or the purpose of what you're trying to change, that has at least personally been really helpful to find that motivation in the darkest of times, is to like reflect on, okay, why am I doing this? So if that can also be connected to that sort of the leadership that you're also showing in your action, why, and I think in many cases it's also okay to show vulnerability as well. Not too much though, unfortunately. That's the weird thing about business leadership. People rely on you to have all the answers in many cases, and you should be transparent, but everyone it will not be helped by knowing everything. So discreet transparency in many cases, I would say. But yeah, a little bit from my perspective on what had helped me, at least in tough times.
I agree, and the transparency aspect is interesting as well. I can only speak for as a sports performance coach, for instance. Let's say you come to me and ask, how do I get faster, or how can I get stronger, whatever it might be, to perform in my sport. Maybe I don't have the answer, but I can't stand and lie either. So it's better for me to just say, I don't know right now, but I'll look it up for you. That's also transparency, right? And that in the long term, that will actually create even more buy-in from the athletes and the clients I'm working with, even though it's impossible to have all the answers. And it's okay to say that, I don't know, but I'll look it up for you and get back to you as soon as I know more. I don't know. I think that's applicable to other industries as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kristian. Ann-Sofie, did you have something, some final questions or thoughts that you wanted to share before you wrap up?
I think for me it's actually pretty clear now. I already like, yeah, I took the QR code here. I'm already like trying to see him like book for a half an hour session. So I think you'll get them then. No, I want to say like thank you so much. It was super inspirational. Like especially like the drainer with the relationships. I can just like really nod to that. It's sometimes you. Speaking from own experience, it can be very healthy to sometimes clean those up as well in order to get back on track and find energy within yourself. So no, but super inspirational session. I really enjoyed it. So, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for the good feedback and for attention.
Thanks, Ann-Sofie. Thanks, Kristian, and everyone for joining and for answering the survey. Stay tuned in your calendars for later invites. There's a bunch of things happening going forward. Yeah, have a great and have a great afternoon filled with positive stress. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.